The woman everyone wanted me to condemn. They dragged her through the dust and threw her at my feet, but their eyes were on me, teaching in the temple. I was in the temple courts, a place of peace and learning, a place where the law was revered and the presence of the Father was felt. The morning sun was warm on the white stones, and the air was filled with a murmur of voices as I taught the people. I spoke of love, of the Father's grace, of a kingdom that was not of this world, yet was already among them. There were scholars and common folk, merchants and children, all gathered around me, listening intently. It was a moment of quiet communion, a sacred space where the truths of heaven were being shared on earth. I felt a deep sense of connection with each person there, seeing not just their faces, but the very depth of their souls, their hopes, their fears, and their quiet prayers. I was explaining a parable about a shepherd who leaves his 99 sheep to find the one that is lost, a story about the immense value of a single soul. My voice was calm, and the crowd was still, hanging on every word. I saw in their eyes a flicker of recognition, the dawning understanding that every one of them, no matter how lost or forgotten, was deeply loved by the Father. The air was thick with a sense of possibility, a feeling that a new dawn was breaking, and that the rigid traditions of the past were giving way to a more compassionate truth. The atmosphere was one of profound peace, a moment of stillness in a world of chaos. The gentle breeze carried the scent of incense from the temple and the quiet whispers of the people. It was exactly the kind of moment that the enemy hates, a moment where hearts were opening and souls were being touched by the light. But I knew that such moments of light often precede a great darkness, a test of faith, a challenge to the truth that was being spoken. I had just finished the parable and was about to answer a question when a sudden commotion broke the peace. The sound of shouting and hurried footsteps echoed through the temple courtyard, a harsh intrusion on the sacred silence. The crowd shifted, turning their heads to see the source of the disturbance. The light in their eyes, which had been so full of peace, was quickly replaced by a cold, hard curiosity. The moment of grace was over, and the moment of judgment had arrived. Crowd interrupts with the accused woman. They came in like a storm, a group of scribes and Pharisees, their faces twisted with a self-righteous fury. And with them, they dragged a woman, her clothes torn, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with dust and tears. They had caught her in the act of adultery. They said, a sin for which the law of Moses was very clear. She must be stoned. But I knew their accusation was not about justice. It was about me. They didn't care about her sin. They cared about trapping me. They threw her down at my feet, a pathetic bundle of shame and terror. The crowd, would have been so attentive to my words just moments before, now watched with bated breath, their silence now heavy with anticipation. They were no longer a flock of sheep listening to their shepherd. They were a jury, a mob hungry for spectacle. The woman's crime was a convenient tool for them to use against me, a carefully planned trap to force me into a corner. The tension in the air was palpable, a crack in the foundation of the peace that had been so carefully built. The light of the morning sun now seemed harsh, unforgiving, highlighting the cruelty in the faces of her accusers. The woman lay at my feet, her body trembling, her face hidden from the public gaze, and yet everyone could feel the weight of her shame. They had stripped her of her dignity and exposed her to the humiliation of a public trial, a tool in their religious and political game. They had brought her to me, a woman who had sinned, to a man they hoped would break the law. They presented the case with a rehearsed fervor, quoting Moses, reminding everyone of the law's clear command. But what they really wanted was a reaction, a misstep, a word for me that would condemn me in the eyes of the people. The crack was open and the trap was set. Now, they waited for me to step into it, demanding judgment. The leading Pharisee stepped forward, his voice a cold blade cutting through the air. "Teacher," he began, the title dripping with false reverence. This woman was caught in the very act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? Their question was not a plea for wisdom. It was a demand for a verdict. Their eyes, once filled with a desire to learn, were now hard and calculating, watching my every move. They were convinced they had me cornered. If I said to stone her, I would appear cruel and contradict the message of love and forgiveness I had been teaching. If I said to let her go, I would be seen as a lawbreaker, defying the very law of Moses they so diligently upheld. The weight of their expectation was immense, a heavy silence that pressed down on all of us. The woman at my feet was not even a person to them anymore. She was a theological problem, a political pawn. They didn't care about her life or her soul. They cared only about winning an argument, about discrediting a man they saw as a threat to their power and authority. The moment of no return. They had drawn a line in the sand, a test they believed I could not pass. The demand for judgment was not just for the woman. It was for me. They wanted to see if I would crumble under the pressure, if my message of grace was just empty words. The woman's fate hung in the balance, a pawn in a much larger, more dangerous game. And I knew that to save her, I first had to expose them, writing in the sand, exposing hypocrisy. I did not answer them. Instead, I simply bent down and began to write in the dust of the temple floor with my finger. I heard the murmurs of the crowd, their impatience growing. What was I doing? Was I ignoring them? Was I buying time? They kept demanding an answer, their voices growing more insistent. I ignored them, my focus entirely on the ground before me. The woman remained at my feet, still trembling, still silent. I am often asked what I wrote that day. I will tell you this. The words themselves are not as important as the act. In that moment, I was not just writing. I was creating a moment of stillness in the storm, a moment of reflection in the chaos of their anger. I was inviting them to look not at the woman, but at themselves. And then I stood up and looked directly at them, at the scribes and Pharisees, and said a single sentence that changed everything. Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. And then I bent down and continued to write in the sand. I did not need to condemn them. I simply gave them a mirror, and in that mirror, they saw the truth of their own hearts. I saw the self-righteousness in their faces crumble, saw the sudden shock of recognition as the weight of their own hidden sins came crashing down on them. The words I wrote were not a list of their sins, but a simple invitation to honesty. And one by one, beginning with the oldest among them, they dropped their stones and walked away. The crowd, which had been so eager to condemn, now stood in silent awe as the accusers left. They saw what had happened. They saw that the law, which they had used as a weapon, had been turned on its head by the truth. The hypocrisy was exposed. The trap was broken, and the woman at my feet was left alone, with only me. Mercy triumphs over judgment. When I finally stood up, the silence was absolute. Only the woman and I remained. I looked down at her, not with condemnation, but with a heart full of compassion. Her face, which had been hidden in the dust, now looked up at me, her eyes filled with desperate hope. Woman, I said gently, were your accusers? Has no one condemned you? She looked around, saw the empty space where the crowd had been, and whispered, no one, Lord. And then I said to her the words that would set her free, not just from a mob, but from her own shame. Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. I did not excuse her sin, nor did I pretend it hadn't happened. But I showed her that mercy is greater than judgment. I showed her that the law, while just, was meant to be a guide to a righteous life, not a weapon of death. I showed her that forgiveness is always available, and that a new beginning is always possible, no matter how great the sin. My purpose in that moment was not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it with love. I wanted to demonstrate that God's justice is always tempered by his mercy, and that the greatest act of justice is to forgive. I saved her from a brutal death, but more importantly, I saved her from the cycle of shame and condemnation that had trapped her. I showed her that she was more than her sin. She was a child of God, worthy of a second chance. I didn't just save her life, I saved her soul. That day, the crowd in the temple courts witnessed a miracle unlike any other. They saw a woman, condemned by all, walk away with new life. They saw the hypocrisy of the powerful exposed, and they saw a new kind of justice, a justice born of compassion and grace. And the woman herself? She walked away a new person. Her life was changed forever, not because she'd been saved from a few stones, but because she'd been saved by a love she never knew existed. She had been seen not for her sin, but for her soul. She had come to the temple courts as an outcast, and she left as a beloved child of God, free to begin her life anew. This is the truth I want you to remember. The world is quick to condemn, to throw stones, to judge you by your failures and your past. But I am not here to condemn you. I am here to offer you forgiveness, to give you a new beginning, to see you not for your sins, but for the beautiful soul you were created to be. I didn't just save that woman's life. I saved her soul, and I want to do the same for you. My child, pause for a moment and take a deep breath. I know the weight of the world can be heavy on your shoulders, and the path ahead may seem uncertain. But know that my love for you is a light that never fades. I see your weariness and the silent battles you face. There is nothing in your heart that is invisible to me. Place your worries and your fears in my hands, and let my peace fill every crack in your being. You are not alone on this journey. You never have been. Even when you feel most isolated, I am with you. I am the gentle voice that encourages you to take one more step, the comfort that embraces you when the tears come. Remember who you are in my eyes, a unique, precious, and deeply loved creation. Your worth is not defined by your failures or your victories, but by my promise of eternal love for you. Do not be afraid to start over, to forgive, or to ask for help. Each day is a new opportunity to draw closer to me. I am always here with open arms, waiting to give you the rest your soul longs for. Trust in me. Trust in the plan I have for your life. Do not worry about tomorrow, for I am already there. Rest in my grace and know that in me, you will find the strength, hope, and purpose you need.